Good afternoon. My name is Glenda Alvin. I'm from Tennessee State University. I'd like to welcome you to this session on the evolution of ebooks. Jack and I wrote this proposal back in the spring, and then we got busy with our lives, and mine got busy with being interim library director, and I was buried under a mountain of paperwork. And then Jack wrote and said, "What are we going to talk about?" I said, "I don't know." So then we had to figure out what we were going to talk about, and we both went and reread the proposal, and I said, "Okay, we don't have anything to talk about, but so let's put it in a PowerPoint." So he wrote back and he says, "Well, you know, we really can't talk about anything new except our experience." So we're talking about the evolution of our individual experiences with ebooks, because we've been in the profession a long time. I've been in acquisitions for over 30 years, and Jack has been
Over 30.
Over 30, so we were there, we think, in the beginning. Ebooks began with collections. We started like with the Net Library collection. From there we acquired eBrary, Books 24/7, and Safari. So as long as they were in collections, everything was fine. Then we picked up some packages like Business Expert Press and Springer Link Books. And again, these were collections, so they were fine. Several years ago, the VP of Business and Finance sent me an email, and he said that ebooks and print subscriptions, e-journals, databases were going to be pulled out of capital outlay and put into operations. He was leaving print books and microfilm and bindery in capital outlay. So this meant that the e-resources went into the same pool of money as furniture and supplies and all that type of thing. So then I had to duke it out with the dean as to whether we could get sofas for the students or whether we could buy a database. But he also gave the ebooks their own separate object code, which means that there was an audit trail for them. When you work with acquisitions and you do multiple formats and so forth, you have all these different pots of money, which I call object codes, and then you have different funds. You have your grant funds, you have your state funds, and so forth. So I always do workarounds trying to match my business practices to what my pots of money are. So in this case, since I had ebooks in operations and I had print books in capital outlay, I couldn't send the purchase order to YBP or Midwest and order ebooks and print books from the same purchase order. The ebooks had to have their own separate purchase order. And that's a lot of work, keeping track of those different streams of funds, and we use deposit accounts. So I said, okay, I'm not going to do 2 sets of purchase orders. We're just going to have to find a workaround. This was okay until the faculty started a few years ago asking for ebooks, single titles, to support their classes. So that meant I had to find that individual title, hopefully in a collection. If it wasn't in EBSCO's ebook collection or in Books 24/7 or Safari, then I had to find a way to pay for it. And my first instance with that was with Wiley, when a professor requested a book, and we could get it, but we had to get a Wiley eBooks license. And that was kind of something portended that would color my future, so to speak. So this is a discussion on In Search of the Single Title. I needed a single title for classroom use, and this requires usually multiple licenses because they're using it for multiple classes. And in my case, most times the requests have come at the beginning of the semester, I need this book right now. They never ask you the semester before. And I explained about capital outlay. So I'm a committed Christian, so when the VP said that I had to buy these books out of 2 different funds, I said, please, Lord, let him retire. So the Lord answered my prayer. He retired next year. But the guy who got his job came up after him, and so when I sent him the email saying, can't I move this back to capital outlay, he said, no, this is sound accounting practices. And he's a much younger man, so he's there for the long haul. So that meant that I was going to have to find a way to pay for these single books. Okay, so the Errand in the Wilderness was Biosecurity and Bioterrorism, the 2nd edition. This was needed for a class, and he asked for it at the beginning of the semester. The ebook was available on the Gobi platform, but I did not have an ebook account with YDP. I did have an ebook account with EBSCO for ebooks. So the workaround was going to be either ask YDP if they could put the book on the EBSCO platform, or ask my account reps if I could pay for the book on the Gobi platform with my EBSCO ebook account. So I opted for number 2. I started with my accounting rep for EBSCO. And I said, can I pay for this that's on the Gobi platform? Because, you know, they're same company, but they're 2 distinct divisions. And she said, ask your Gobi rep. So I asked the Gobi rep, and it was like, okay, follow up to get an answer. She said, yes, you can pay for it with your ebook account at EBSCO, but you do not have a YDP ebook account. So I said, okay, no problem. Send me the paperwork, and I'll do that. So I got the ebook account. Then it was follow up. And I got a email from their licensing department at YDP who said that I had to sign an Elsevier ebook licensing agreement. Well, at our institution, our licenses have to go through the university's legal department. And we had a new attorney, and sometimes the licenses would take 4 months to come out of that department. So we got the Elsevier license. I began the quest in March, and I received the book in May. The semester was over. So the lesson that I learned through all of this is that I do have to have, with my databases, a ebook license. With Elsevier, I need an ebook license. With Wiley, I need an ebook license so that when the single titles come up, then I can just go ahead and purchase it without having to go through all of this round the river, down the road, and across the lane. The ebook packages come and go. For instance, our Safari was paid for by the state, and then when that agreement ran out, Safari went away because the university could no longer pay for it as a single purchase. So it's important to have this flexibility because faculty are more and more requesting that we purchase a single title that they can put into their courseware and have the students access either one specific chapter of the book or successive chapters of the book. You're up next.
Oh. All righty. I'm going to tell you a little story because being a folklorist, that's my other life. I tell stories. And this is a story about how an organization has gone through radical transformation. and radical is an understatement. And ebooks became an integral part of that radical transformation. And this is what happened to us. First of all, I'm going to refer you to a 2019 State of Academics Libraries Benchmark Survey. I'm sure some of you folks have seen this thing. Administered by Library Journal and commissioned by Ex Libris. And a couple of things that really jumped out at me right off the bat. First of all, the idea was that they find out what the missions of the libraries were, the challenges to academic libraries, and evaluate what could be done to help them face the future. First and foremost, libraries are reinventing themselves. Yeah, I bet if I asked for a show of hands, a lot of your hands would go up on this one. With regards to budgets, which I call the gasoline that drives the car of libraries, 37% expect budgets to remain stable. Good for them. 26% expect budgets to grow. Even better for them. 28% expect their budget to shrink. Bingo. Okay. In contrast, however, we're leading their affordable learning initiatives, and look at this, 78% support course materials in a very direct manner. You can already see the shift away from the old research collections that were collected just in case. 56% want to increase their support for research. Reminds me of the old saying that when I first started in libraries in 1983, we need to do more with less. You know, we all really embrace that. We've heard that one over and over. And I think we didn't understand the impact of that statement as professionals. We kind of went through little budget cuts and serials and little loss of percentages, loss of inflations on a year, and we kind of made adjustments. We never had the kind of changes that have been foisted on some of us recently, within the last couple of years. And that's your dramatic cuts. Your whole transformational, what I call transformational cuts to how you operate and what you have to operate with. My part of this presentation is to address the urgency that those changes foisted upon us from outside made on us. And first of all, I hope I hit the right one. No. We weren't alone. Kentucky as a whole went through a huge transformation in terms of higher education. In terms of WKU, I like this statement: companies that change may survive, but companies that transform thrive. That's what we're trying to do at WKU. Because as of 2018, we lost basically about 20% of our FTEs students. We lost almost all of our international students to a series of events and situations that developed. And I can tell you, economically, we were counting on those international students. This meant the loss of over $6 million in tuition revenue. A closure of one half of the main library. We were two large buildings. All of a sudden they told us within a 12-month period, we were going to go into one building. We had probably the largest reference collection in the state. We went into a huge, I'm sorry I'm getting over bronchitis, and I'm sorry if I keep coughing. Over 2 million books and serials got weeded in a 6-month period. It was radical. The dumpsters were overflowing at times. And we just kind of crossed our fingers and worked. A loss of over 30 full and part-time positions. And we weren't that big an operation anyway. We lost almost all of our student assistants. I used to have 5, now I'm probably going to end up with 1. And we have, in acquisitions, amongst other things, we have to do the mail. We sort the mail, take in everything that comes in the building. So that's a little sideball, and that's what we use the students for. So we're going to have to get back into doing that again. Everyone is now doing different things. I've gone back into reference, which is odd because I trained as a reference librarian. And due to a power struggle at the University of Virginia, ended up in tax services. So I, like always, adapt and went with it, which covered me for the next 30 years. But I'm now back doing reference again. We've had huge cuts from state funding. We've had an antagonistic situation with our now, hopefully, former governor. I'm sure some of you are following the news. He was actively and verbally abusive towards higher education. I'm sorry. We're significantly now we've lost another 1,200, over 1,200 people for the enrollment. And I heard through the grapevine we've got dorm rooms standing empty. So we're not done quite yet. We've had a lot of building. We've had 3 extended campuses basically closed. Significant reduction in the nature of what we do. And of course, as you might guess, we were a very old style, traditional, just in case, scholarly development operation. We did as much writing and publishing. That's how we got promoted. That all has gone in a complete 360. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. With our new dean. It's a wonderful change. We couldn't have sustained ourselves the way we were, but this is what drove some of this. All right. Oops, wrong way. All right, let's get there. eBooks, basically, were seen as a way of coping. Why? It reduced processing. It had all the sort of things that eBooks have been touted as having: accessibility, usage stats. We became very dependent overnight on the production of usage stats. And as we adopted Alma, we got the first time the real ability to generate those kinds of usage stats that we could use. Overall, it really, even though it cost more, it turned out to be a better value. Print usage was declining and continued to decline, and the print medium, however we found it, was far from obsolete, and people still wanted it. Recently, we inaugurated DDA, but I'll get into that a little later. Our timeline began in 2002. We got one specialty eBooks collection, which we didn't advertise, which we didn't do anything to promote, and it didn't work. And it, to those against the eBooks from the beginning, and there were those, this was confirmation that they were right. That eBooks was a short-lived fad. It was all going to go out in a few years. We moved into net library in a very limited way. In fact, when I went to investigate why we still had net library titles in the EBSCO platform, nobody could remember where they came from. Nobody could remember what we did with them and why they got there. 2005, we bought Project Muse. We were getting more and more serious. 2010, see that 5-year jump. Rittenhouse R2. Part of our nursing school and our health services have moved off campus to the hospital. That drove that. We had to respond. And at that time, the extended campuses were flourishing. So we had to try to meet those kind of needs. 2012, there's another big jump. My Library Project Muse, eBook Central, Springer, Oxford Stage. My Library was our first real attempt at it. 2013, EBSCO eBooks. Now, how do we do this? We went at it several ways. We've always operated with a subject specialist liaison structure for ordering books with departmental reps. How many people have something like that now? Does anybody still do that with, where you have a subject liaison and you have a departmental rep? Yep, there are a few. That was kind of still how we operated, even with the first eBooks. We were still ordering them one by one by one, and putting them all on the same platform. That turned out to be not a very good choice. We've changed that now. I'm getting ahead of myself. And some of the other things we did, basically 90% of our library materials budget is now on e-resources. We are now a Ebook-preferred. I have to kind of get an answer from faculty and selectors as to why, if there's an e-book option, why you're wanting the print. There are still a lot of cases where they're still wanting the print. It's not been universally accepted. And it's odd, because a lot of it is from younger faculty, and that's something I did not expect at all. I expected younger faculty to be in lockstep with ebooks, but they weren't. We're still getting a lot of resistance. We went from a ginormous DVD collection to a streaming preferred. We did away with gifts in kind altogether, completely shutting down. We found there were benefits, of course, a lot of these you know. We've looked for things with digital rights management taken care of. And part of it is we also shifted to YBP Gobi. And I have to say, throughout all of this, they've been superb. They really have. Patient beyond anybody's normal expectations, because we've had a lot of struggles. We had struggles with selectors who didn't want to adapt to ebooks, who wouldn't order ebooks. We had situations with the catalogers who didn't want to accept the records that were coming over. And we've gone back and forth several times. We shifted from the focus of collection development from one or two people to a team. That has been very successful. And these included public services librarian and even staff. So in time now, and we're having to do another one, another large serials cut, it has worked exceptionally well. And we really have gotten the kind of feedback and input. So if you aren't doing this kind of thing, I would highly recommend organizationally creating these kinds of structures. It will help you so much in what you have to do if you have to do the rough stuff. And the rough stuff is what I mean when you have to go in, when you cut all the extraneous journals and cut all the extraneous stuff that you had, and now it's down to, but I like that journal from the faculty. Or it's now down to that point. We are at that point. It's now, this is where the ALMA is generating the kind of usage stats that we can go to people and say, I know you like this, but it gets 3 uses a year for $700. Can we really justify that now? And you'll be surprised when you hand that kind of information over to them. They usually don't balk. They really don't. They see it, they understand, because a lot of our departments have been cut, consolidated, eliminated. It's a campus-wide transformation. This gives you a little sense of what we have in terms of ebooks and the platforms that we have. It may not seem to some of your larger operations, it may not seem like much, but it's a lot for us to manage. One thing that's interesting to me, and I'll point it out to you, is this. We had a continual rise of usage. And then all of a sudden it's doing this. And we don't know why yet. We don't know why it's leveled off and reducing. We now review every couple of months our usage stats, because we're trying to trace exactly what's happening. And I think this is really going to give us really usable information. One thing we did is we took that ginormous reference collection, and I got the idea right here in Charleston. And we did away with it. It's gone. There's this tiny little thing behind the reference desk. And the rest of it is in the collection. And it circulates, and we get usage on it. We also eliminated its funding. It had its own independent funding with over $20,000. That was political. It was. As you can guess, this did not all go down smooth as silk. Everyone's happy and dancing in a circle. This took a long time and a lot of tears and upset to get through. But organizationally, it was for the best. All right. Our search for tomorrow. Does anybody remember it? Okay, you know what that means. Okay. For those that you don't, this was an old soap opera. And we've had a lot of soap operatic type moments throughout this whole ebook process. We have got some subject level resistance, mostly from the arts and humanities. They are still our large paper product book buyers, selectors. I think that will change. I predict it will. We've also moved away from the whole librarian as selector. There's a study done in Case Western University, and they found that 73% of the ebooks that librarians selected from 2012 to 2015 were never used. Okay, that means that's about the same level of usage that we had with paper. So we know what people want. I'm sorry, the numbers say otherwise. And you know, I'm as guilty. I was a selector too. I still am. And I think I was as guilty as the next one. Oh, that's a great book. It's by Cambridge University Press. I'll just buy that. Okay. We don't do that anymore. Usage stats drive everything. Oh, our early support mechanisms, health sciences. Major supporters of the ebook collection, heavy users of the ebook collection from the Rittenhouse R2 collection. We don't have a huge number of titles, but what are in there are heavily used. They also tend to, this is not to say anything bad, those books in paper form will disappear within a week. We have to buy some of them 3 and 4 times. I see you laughing back there. I don't know if it's professional or whatever. But that segment will steal those books. I don't get it. So one thing we have done is with textbooks, we have something about Western Kentucky is we have probably 60 to 70% of the students are the first of their family to ever attend college. And I have a great empathy for them because I am one of those people. Was the first of their family to ever finish 4 years. So I understand where they're coming from, but we have, a lot of them still don't have a lot of money. They're struggling to get through each semester. So what we've done is we've decided to buy as many e-textbooks as we can. And that took some negotiation with the bookstore, because this hits their revenue stream. But we've also, with paper textbooks, we have set up an entire section behind the cert desk so we can keep better track of those wonderful little texts that seem to walk away so easily. That's another good thought to use, because textbooks, once they're there, just don't stay. Sometimes it wouldn't even, we'd shelve them and they'd be gone by the next morning. That's how fast they'd go. Where we're going, we are going into DDA. We started our pilot program in 2019. It's for STEM titles. We had basically lost touch with our science people. I'm telling tales out of school. I'm sure that my doing this would not be appreciated, but we did. they stopped using the library, they stopped using most of what we did, they didn't respond to emails. So we decided, let's try a pilot program where we set up a DDA for them, and we create a situation where they can go in and find things in the catalog. Okay, so we set up one with Gopi, and they gave us a profile. It was a classic, it reminded me so much of doing your classic approval plan. You know, has anyone done this for your library? Have you set up the DDA profiles? Okay, ain't, as they say in Arkansas, ain't no big thing. Because it really is just like setting up an approval plan. Your publishers, your subject areas, your LC classifications, all done the same way. Once that's set up, then you have to work out the transference of the records. Usually a title, once ordered, once triggered, will become active immediately. And yet we'll need to go in and finish it acquisitions-wise. So the record will come in, the IT person gets the load. He gets the load initially, orders are triggered. Once that happens, the order records appear. We go in and finish the order record because we keep track, although we budget at the college level, we have individual subject line funding in a reporting code. And if any of you, how many people use Alma? Okay, you've got that reporting code. That's where we track the individual, how many sociology ordered, what the cost is, all that, we track that way. Then we finish it up, it's activated, well, it's already activated in this case, but in the single purchase ebooks, we go in and activate. I forgot to tell that part, I apologize. We're going to keep moving that. We're probably in our next, if the STEM pilot program works, we're going to move it up into education and health sciences. I also have a second job. I work at a public library. So I got interested in what their ebooks were like. They have well in excess of 20,000 ebooks in several platforms, Overdrive, RI something. The one part of their ebook collection that isn't working is children's ebooks. And they still have a large, in fact, enormous room of children's books that are heavily used. So you really don't know all the time, always, what's going to appear and what's going to be popular. Another issue that presented itself, should we market this? And there were several amongst the library faculty who felt, no, we just put it there and they'll find it by themselves. Well, what if they've stopped looking at your catalog? What if they no longer even go in there? What are you doing? Coming out of a marketing background, that's just inconceivable. So we had a chance to true some stuff up. So I got a chance to write everybody a nice little note and tell them about the ebook program. Sure enough, all of a sudden we've got orders. Got them back into the catalog. I consider that a plus. Some people don't. But we have budgeted ebooks by college. Everything is a traditional purchase on the single ebooks. The DDA has its own funding. Okay. Next thing we've got to do is we've got to start weeding these ebooks. That's going to be a challenge. We've got a lot of stuff sitting out there. We need to go in and develop some criteria, just as we would. In other words, this is not some big mystic thing. You're still treating it fundamentally the way you've always treated content. You see if it's been used. If it hasn't been used, you take it out. Because it's a usage world now. At least for institutions of our level and rank. Okay? And that's something else that has to happen. We have to come to a realistic perception of who we are and what we really do. You know, we all like the status of being a big research institution, but we just aren't. And if we can no longer keep that facade up, we've got to let it drop. and become a clean, quick and dirty operation. There's no shame whatsoever in it. Okay, I'm wrapped. This is the last thing. Everything on usage and to continue to work towards a responsible, fluid organizational structure. In other words, the whole thing with e-resources is they transform you. They transform the library into a completely different kind of organization. I'll just leave that with you. In this case, what is it? Marshall McLuhan said the medium is the message. This is that case. Thank you so much.
Does anybody have any questions?
I think your drop in usage, Jack, was in 2018 when you were losing students and going through organizational change.
Could be, could very well be. 18 was a transformational year.
Why it's continuing to drop, I can't say.
I don't know.
But I think that could have been the beginning.
Now we don't buy except if it's focused on curriculum. It has to be tied somehow to curriculum. And this one is both for e and print. Nothing is really purchased out there as a, gee, this is nice. We have some folks that are still trying to do this. But they're sort of hanging on to a sinking ship. I shouldn't have said that. Well, anyway, today I said it.
Oh. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question around meeting, and you said that libraries should read ebooks like they do any others. But do you see a distinction, like if there are ebooks that you own, is there a need to read them? I mean, is there a criteria that's different if you don't have a space issue? Or what do you see as the criteria? And maybe the difference between reading print and reading.
One criteria is like when we have ebooks that have several editions. In other words, we have a 1984 edition of that book, then we have a 1995 edition, and then we have a 2015 edition. Those other prior editions of that ebook don't really need to be in the catalog.
One thing we've also found is that in several cases, and this has almost occurred 99% in health sciences, the need for the book would increase. And since we had only a single user ebook we were purchasing, that was the rule, you had people who were buying 2 and 3 copies. So now we finally opened up the whole thing to multiple copy usage purchases. And we're trying to talk to the selector to say, get out there, get with your people, determine ahead of time as much as you humanly possible so that we don't end up with 3 copies of single-use ebooks. And we're going to weed those out and try to maybe transform them into a multi-use.
I think in the vendor platform, some of them go in sort of a dark space, but they're still discoverable in the vendor.
Yeah, they're still discoverable, as long as they're discoverable. And the thing of it and like I said, we have not got our criteria yet. I'm just presenting something that's new. We really haven't developed it yet. That would be a whole interesting program, or at least one talk within a program, I think in about a year or 2, as to how we really do this. If you've got some, I'd love to hear it.
Just some, I know, I'm speaking with libraries in different regions, and that things like, different subject areas like law or medicine, there's liability to have full
Yes.
content, right? Or versus in the social sciences or humanities, there's a more of a desire to keep or reference,
Exactly.
there's no use by date. So I just wondered, a lot of the drive to read physical books comes from that.
Was a physical space,
Right,
which
right.
we
And-
technically don't have.
And I think there's often an assumption if it's digital, there's not a need to read, but there are cases, and I think, I don't feel like there's a lot of rigor around that yet.
No, I don't think so either. I haven't been able to find much of anything on it. That's going to be in the next 6 months in our case.
And I think there's an opportunity for automation.
Yeah.
There.
So I have a question for Glenda. You were talking about adding ebook licenses to platforms where you already have journals.
Mhm.
Do publishers allow you to do that even though at that moment you're not buying any ebooks in that platform?
I think that they would, because like when we get Wiley online, it comes with the journals and with the books. And they don't have a deposit account where you can just buy the books, you know, so I would have to get I had to get a license to buy one book from the Wiley platform. So it makes sense to just go ahead and do them both at the same time when our license comes up.
You can do the licensing without purchasing.
Okay.
Yep.
You had a question?
Yeah, just kind of comment. Things I am able to think about health sciences because I'm coming from College of Medicine Library.
Okay.
Yeah, and why my library definitely ebook, not print.
Mhm.
Always faculty member ask us, please find ebook period. Because College of Medicine, at this College of Medicine, I think it's applicable to any other health science institution, health science department, because they have clinical training. They are not on campus all the time. Definitely has to be ebook,
Yes.
e-journal, e-database.
And with our e-courses,
Yeah.
you've got to have the resources for them in that format. They
Yeah.
can't come to campus.
Yeah, and actually my institution is very interesting because I came to my institution 2 years ago. Already my successor, actually my supervisor, studied with College of Medicine, studied the program. We received the list of the all textbook, required recommended textbook from year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 from College of Medicine. Once I received it in the early spring, if I have to order ebook, I start negotiation at the time.
You
Try
should do
to-
what? You do what?
I'm going to start the negotiation in the early spring.
Yes.
And it depends on the period. Year 1, year 2, okay to in the early spring. However, year 3, year 4, they are in a clinical rotation. We have to really start super early because some clinical rotation start early, late spring or early summer. Kind of more communication with the program.
I think it's going to make, in terms of our public services, people who deal with departments, going to make them a lot more aggressive,
Yes.
or they're going to create a lot more interactions with faculty, which can't help but be good.
Yeah.
I'm also medical, I talked to our ILO people, if we have it there's gonna be somebody requesting the print copy. They
Yeah,
say,
we
I know
have-
you have but I prefer print.
We inaugurated Get It Now. How many people have Get It Now? Has anybody heard of Get It Now?
Yeah.
You got it?
Okay,
We
so-
budgeted initial $5,000, it's now at 60 grand. That's called, it has wiped out traditional ILL, but it's extremely popular.
We're over, the session's over
Oh.
at 4:10, so, come on.
Sorry,
Thank you
thank
for
you so
coming.
much. Hope it's been helpful.